then the WIAC Plus Foundation. Then moving on to postgraduate. All of our postgraduate programs fall into two different categories. So you'll be familiar with these terms, a 2H1 and a 2H2. That would be the bachelor's degree that you would exit with in your home country. And then we would look at a 2H1 and a 2H2 based on our entry requirements. So an example there, and I would say about 60% of our programs are a 2H1, 40% of our postgraduate programs are a 2H2. So if you were going for something like corporate finance, which is a 2H1 program, then we would require you to have at least 60% in your bachelor's or a 3.5 out of 5 GPA. If you were looking for something like management and marketing, which is a 2H2 program, then we would require at least 50% in your bachelor's or a GPA of 3 out of 5. Links here to both of those and also a link to the different bands at undergrad level. This is just really a high-level intro. We know that every student is different. Every mark sheet can have slight nuances. So these assessments, so when an application is submitted, it's reviewed by the application team, the admissions team, but it's also reviewed by the academic team. So every single student who applies for a postgraduate program in particular will have their transcript reviewed by the person who's teaching on the program. So it does get a significant assessment by an academic. So for those students that require a foundation program, we work with a number of partners. So we accept the NC-UK certificate, either done somewhere locally or in Ireland. Griffith College have a campus in Cork. They run foundation programs for UCC students. And then Unihaven on campus, which is part of the Cambridge Education Group. They also have a campus in Ireland here in Maynooth, which is not that far from Cork. And they also run foundation programs for UCC students. So we would have students from Nigeria coming into us this September who are currently in one of these locations in Ireland. So it's a very successful pathway. Now, where English is required, then we would look for an English language cert. Applications would state at the point of application, if based on your country of origin, whether you need English or not. From my memory, and I'll double check it for you, but I don't think there's an English language cert required for students coming through from Nigeria, but I'll double check it for you. So this is really for the team at Jestone for when they're submitting an application. So there is an application fee that every student pays, which is €50, that allows for 2 programs to be assessed, whether it's undergrad or postgraduate. The timeline for assessment is 3 to 5 weeks, depending on the availability of the academic who's assessing your application. Programs that can be applied for are taught and research. We have 1 intake each year, and that's in September. And then the application window is for undergrad, December to May, and for postgraduate, October to June. So we're still currently open for applications for both undergraduate and postgraduate for this coming September intake. When a student gets an offer, we require a deposit of €1,000 to secure the place. That must be paid within 28 days of the offer going out. The sooner the better, because programs do fill up. Not all students who get an offer get a place because they don't pay their deposit early enough. The fees are paid in 2 different installments. So 50% of the fees are paid in August before they start the program in September, and then the remaining 50% is paid in January. All payments are via TransferMate, which is a portal that the universities use, and all of these payment receipts are accepted by the visa office. Deposits can be refunded in certain instances only. So if a visa is not granted, if the final grades are not achieved for a conditional offer, and if an English language cert is required, if that's not obtained. And they're the only three reasons. This is a very quick aid memoir of the type of documents that we require for an undergraduate or a postgraduate program. So, and it's important to stick to this. Don't give us what we don't ask for. Don't overload the system with documents. Only provide the minimal required documents for success. And that means that you get a quick turnaround on a decision. So a little bit about fees and scholarships. So the good news is that tuition fees are very competitively priced. So they're between 17 and 25,000 euro per year, depending on the program. And then living expenses in Ireland, including accommodation, we would recommend anything between 12 and 17,000 euro. That would for the full 1 year, and that will include accommodation. So students really need to be budgeting in those areas. The reason that the band for accommodation is so broad is because there's lots of options available. So there's really high-end accommodation, and then there's really, suitable accommodation for students, which is still good quality, but significantly more competitively priced than some of the more luxurious options. But there's something there for everyone's budget, okay? But the key bit is that if you're tight on budget, you need to make sure that your application is in early, and that also that your deposit on an accommodation option is also in early. In relation to scholarships, so the good news is that all international students can qualify for scholarships. They are automatic. There's no need to apply separately for a scholarship. They're merit-based. So for undergraduates, if you achieve the academic requirement, then it's between 15 and 25,000, depending on the college that you're applying for. So humanities is 15%, business and science is 25%. And that 25% is applicable for the 4 years of the undergraduate program. So for example, if a program is 25,000 euro for the year, then the student would pay 18,750 for the 4 years each year. So the scholarship applies the lifetime of the undergrad. And then at postgraduate level, it's merit-based. So depending on the GPA that the student is presenting from their bachelor's, it will either drive 5, 10, or 20% scholarship. So that's really good. And like it's getting to a 20%, lots of students get the 20% because of the cutoff from the GPA. But that's a really positive message for students to receive. And there's a link to that specific table. Again, this is a very busy slide. I'm not going to go through it all. What I would just like to say is that UCC is open to receiving PhD and research applications across all of our 4 colleges. It is a slightly different process than applying for a taught program, in that the supervisor must be identified first, and that the student needs to receive a green light from the supervisor to apply. And once you have that email from the supervisor to apply, then you can apply. So that's the only dependency. Okay, so a little bit about careers. So I mentioned earlier about Cork being a really prolific environment for careers and for student success and employability. So there's a couple of things supporting that. Number one is we have a national scheme for Ireland's Stayback Visa, which is the graduate scheme. So that allows students who completed an undergrad to get a work visa for 1 year, and those who completed a postgrad to get a work visa for 2 years. So many students avail of that, and that drives a lot of interest in UCC. But coupled with that, UCC then offers fantastic career services here at UCC from day one. And even before students arrive, they're already engaged with the career services team. So when a student gets an offer and they pay a deposit, they will be invited to take part in a module, which is online, called Propel. And that module really gives them an introduction to the job market in Ireland as an international student. So they're already learning about what it's like to work in Ireland, graduate from UCC, work in Ireland for either an Irish company or an international company based in Ireland, and why is that different than applying for a job back at home. So we're already introducing them to the cultural differences of working in Ireland as opposed to working somewhere else in the world. There's a great progression rate, so 90% of our undergraduates consistently enter employment or continue on to postgraduate education. All of our services are fully aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And you say, why is that important? It's important because employers find that important. And, you know, if a student is going into an interview and they are fluent in talking about sustainable development goals, employers love that, and because it's already part of their strategy. We run a number of annual recruitment fairs throughout the year, 2 big ones, one in autumn and one in spring. That's where we invite many of the employers based in Ireland and abroad onto campus to meet students. All of our employer partners are involved in our social media, and they do takeovers of our Instagram, for example. 90% of the programs at undergrad level have a placement, either internationally or nationally. So, for example, if a student does an undergrad in computing science, in their year 3, they can decide to take that year 3 in another university abroad, either in Europe or in the States, or anywhere. Wherever we have a partnership, the student can decide to do that. Now, there is a placement manager, and so many of them will either, and then they can do a placement here. So they can either do a placement in another university or a placement in a company. So, for example, if someone is doing a bachelor's in finance, they can do 6-month placement of their within their 3rd year in a company like EY or Grant Thornton, which is a global accountancy firm. So they'll get 6 months placement on the placement program. This isn't now a graduate program, it's a placement program within their degree program. Then we run about 250 workshops throughout the year, and that's really to help students with their CVs, helping them with their presentation skills, helping them with their interview technique. What is it like to be on a panel and, you know, sit in front of 4 people from a company and be the best version of yourself? So all of those things we help students to upskill on so that they're really ready for employment. But this is an award-winning team. They're fantastic. It's not all about clubs or study. So students do get an opportunity to have fun. So we have about 53 sports clubs and over 100 societies. So there really is something for everyone at UCC. Whether you're into sport or you're not into sport, you might be into drama, theatre, whatever. There's really a club for you. And my absolute recommendation on this slide is that a student needs to join a club or a society, because it will help them integrate, it will help them have a better international experience, and it will absolutely help their employability, because they're building a network already. A club and a society builds a network, an employment network, just naturally. So I always encourage students to be part of a club or a society. A little bit about accommodation. So I mentioned earlier that they should apply early for accommodation, which is correct. So we have a dedicated accommodation and community life team at UCC to help students with their options. There's a number of different options available for students. They can either choose A, campus accommodation, which is owned by the university. They can look at B, which is private student apartment complexes. So these are similar to campus accommodation, except it's just not owned by the university, but they're surrounding the university. So they're all within 1 kilometre of the campus. House shares, so there's a number of private houses that students can rent together. So for example, 4 students in a 4-bed apartment or in a 4-bed house. And then they can find that through this portal called Student Pad, which we have at UCC. It's a little bit like Airbnb, finding the right accommodation, and then you would do that with other students. And then the last option is what we call digs. So these are owner-occupied rentals. So this is where a student would live with an Irish family. So where the landlord is also living in the house and you're living with the family. And that really gives some students a true international experience. But it's not suitable to everybody. So that's why there's all of these options available. Again, the key bit here, the minute you get an offer on a program and you pay your deposit on a program, you should then be putting a deposit on an accommodation option at the same time so that you're securing your place. Look, it's a university city, so accommodation is tight. So the sooner that you book your accommodation, then the better, you know. But all international students get their first or second choice every year. Okay, so that's the end of the overview. Just a reminder that UCC is available on the usual social media platforms. Please follow those platforms, engage with the university. There'll be lots of updates happening there and support online. So I'm going to stop sharing at this point and check the Q&A.
Thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for that very insightful presentation. So we are going to go into the Q&A, but just before that, we'll just take a 2 minutes break so you can have something to drink, and so that for those that are just joining, you can also have the opportunity to drop your question in the chat. I noticed that we had quite a number of persons join while the presentation was already midway. So I understand that we might have people asking questions that you already touched on during the presentation. So we'll just put all those questions together. So we'll ask them, if they are similar questions, we'll ask them at once. So we don't keep going over the same topic. All right, so we're going to go on that now. Immediately after the break, we are going to go right into the Q&A.
Great, thank you. I will let you manage that. Thank you.
All right.
Hi, my name is Jessica Lindsay. I'm from Nigeria. I did the International Foundation year in Dublin International Foundation College in 2010, over 10 years ago, about 10 years ago. Yes, that's what I did. After finishing secondary school, I got an offer to study in Ireland. I had to do the International Foundation year first, and 2010. After that, I got an offer into UCC, University College Cork, and I studied genetics. I finished with a bachelor's degree in genetics in 2015. And after that, I've just been updated, I've been updating myself, studying and doing certifications and data analysis. And that's what I work as now. I work as a data analyst with the operations team in Bolt, the ride-hailing company. So I've just been keeping up with the fast-growing pace economy around the world. I was in Dublin for a year. It was a little difficult at first because I had just moved to a new country at 17, but it was great that I had friends with me. Studying in Dublin was interesting. I like the fact that in the IFC, the classes were small, so everyone got acquainted with everybody really fast, and we knew each other. Everybody knew each other in a short period. In Cork, though, I really, really loved Cork, and Cork was more comfortable for me. The school was more diverse. It's a university college. I made new friends. I had made bigger connections. It was 4 years, so I could argue that because I was there for 4 years, I feel more comfortable there than in Dublin. But Dublin is great. Cork is beautiful. Dublin is beautiful. I enjoyed myself in Dublin and in Cork for the period of 6 years. So that was in Ireland before I returned to Nigeria. Schooling in Cork was interesting. The professors were great. The buildings are beautiful, and the history is. I remember the funny facts about University College Cork. And yeah, I had a great time studying in Cork. Yeah.
All right, so we're back. Thank you to all that joined once again. Thank you for taking our time to join today's webinar. We are going to be going right into the Q&A session. So that was a student who studied in University College Cork, just sharing her experience. He came in through the foundation program that Michael touched on while he was going through the presentation. So I have a couple of questions in the chat box. Also, my colleague Tosin is also she's been dropping the contact details that you can use to reach us in any of our offices, Abuja, Lagos, Uyo, in the chat. So you can do well to take any of those numbers and contact us if you need to. But I'm also aware that we were all contacted by an advisor from Jestone Education. So you can also direct all of your questions or inquiries through the advisor that contacted you. So we'll go right into the question. There are questions that are program specific in the chat. So for those that are asking program specific questions, we might not be able to take those questions, as your advisor would have to work with you to check what programs you are eligible for. We know how to check for all of those programs, so you can work closely with your advisor after this session to inform you on what programs you're eligible for and that you meet the requirement for, if you do not get an answer to your question directly on today's meeting. So the first question we have here: can someone who has 2-2, that's second class lower, apply for postgraduate? That's the first question.
Yes, so the answer is yes. So as I said earlier, our postgraduate programs fall into two categories, a 2H1 and a 2H2. So a 2-1 and a 2-2. I would say roughly 60% of our programs are a 2-1, 40% of our programs are a 2-2. So then that candidate, depending on the program that they were interested in, would find a 2-2 program in that 40%. So across all of our colleges, all 4 colleges offer 2-1 and 2-2 programs. And it really is based on complexity. Some programs are more difficult than others. And some programs are more competitive than others, so therefore they have a higher 2-1 requirement. But yes, we do take students who have a 2-2 equivalent.
All right, thank you for that. And the person has a follow-up question. Do you charge for application fees? He already mentioned that there's an application fee for every application that goes in. That's 50 euros, correct?
50 euro, yeah, and that allows for 2 programs to be assessed.
All right, so that clarifies that question. Somebody, like I mentioned, some persons joined midway, so we'll just take question. I think question regarding fees. A lot of people those that join halfway might be coming just for that information. So I would ask this question, and if there are any more questions regarding the fees, we won't touch on them again. So what is the school fees and the deposit, and is there any cybersecurity course for masters?
Great.
So just touch on this.
So we have a deposit to hold your place. So when you get an offer, you need to pay 1,000 euro for your deposit. And then by August, you need to pay 50% of your fee, whatever the fee is for that program. That will be outlined in the offer letter. And then by January, you pay the remaining 50% of the total fee. So let's say, for example, the fee is 20,000 euro. You pay 1,000 to secure the place. You pay 9,000 come August, and then you pay the remaining 10,000 in January. So that's the course of events for paying the fees. And then cybersecurity. So we have a master's in computing science, which contains modules in cybersecurity. And then also students can do a master's by research in cybersecurity. So they're the 2 options there.
All right, that clarifies that. There's a question here from Nancy. I believe what she's trying to ask is if you accept study gaps, because she's interested in applying for your nursing program. So do you want to touch on study gaps?
Yeah, so study gaps are not a problem for us. So as long we look at the final grade that the student has achieved, and also the modules that the student has taken when we're doing the assessment. So we don't take we're not interested in a study gap or a career gap.
All right. So for the scholarship of 20% for the postgraduate students, what's the minimum? what's the minimum to access the 20% scholarship?
So to get the 20% scholarship,
yeah,
it's 3.5 out of 5.
All right, so that's basically a 2-2.
So just 1 second, let me confirm that. Just 1 second.
Okay.
Just 1 second. So we have 20%.
So yeah, for those that are just joining, it's a 2-2.
So let me bring up the slide again.
All right.
Just 1 moment, I need to find it again. I think that's it. So the scholarships, okay, here. So 20%, so 5% would be the 2-2, 10% would be the 2-1, and then if a student presented with a 1H, which is even higher again, then that drives the 20%. So I'll just tell you what that percentage is, okay? What that GPA is.
Okay.
So it would be higher than the 3.5. So you're looking at a 4 out of 5. So you see, we don't require a student to have a 1H. They just need to have a 2-1, right? Which is the highest that we require. That would drive a 10%. If a student presented with 4 out of 5 GPA, that would drive a 20% scholarship. So again, many students present with 4 out of 5 GPAs. They're eligible for all programs, and they would then get 20% on a 4 out of 5. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Great.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much. So Ernest, you have your answer. I noticed you dropped a follow-up question asking for an answer to that question. Also, there's a question here. You offer research programs. The person is asking regarding veterinary graduate that is a graduate of veterinary medicine seeking to apply to your College of Medicine and Health. Is asking for the tuition fee for the School of Medicine. So just before you answer that, I just wanted to say that for program-specific questions, you might not be able to take it on the call, but Jestone Education, like I mentioned, you have somebody that reached out to you before the start of the webinar. That's an expert advisor on our team that has been assigned to work closely with you to help you, help with your course search process to get to the course that is the best fit for what you're looking for. So that advisor is also going to be reaching back to you after this webinar to begin your application process. So all program-specific questions can be directed to them and they will take that question. But do you want to touch on the School of Medicine, maybe the programs that they offer? Since I have a couple of questions here, I'm asking for the School of Medicine.
So within the School of Medicine, so the programs that are on offer through Jestone would be pharmacy, nursing, public health, older person rehab, anything like that. So the 2 programs that are excluded and that we're not recruiting for are medicine and dentistry. So if it's a specific question about med and dent, then they'll need to talk to a Jestone staff member and they'll put them onto that specific website. But everything else is open for, you see, we have the College of Medicine and Health. That's the name of the college. But the programs on offer are, as I said, pharmacy, nursing, public health.
All right, thank you so much for that. So there's a question here because you mentioned during the training that someone with a 2H1 can apply directly for your PhD program. So the question is, can a student with a 2H2 and a master's degree be eligible for the PhD program?
As long as the master's degree is a 2H1.
Okay. Okay, all right. So also we have 2 questions here concerning the nursing top-up. So I think I would just want you to touch on that a bit, the nursing top-up program. Yeah.
So nursing top-up is a very popular program. So it's a 1-year degree. So it's suitable for students who have a diploma in nursing and they want to upgrade and uplift to a degree. So they can do that with a 1-year degree at UCC. So what do they need to have? They need to have a diploma in nursing. They need to be registered on the Nigerian Nursing Board, and they need to have at least 6 months experience of nursing. So there are the 3 criteria in order for them to be assessed for the program.
All right, thank you so much for that. Also, there's a question here regarding the foundation colleges you would accept applications for. I know you mentioned about 4 colleges.
Mm-hmm.
Do you accept foundation certificates from colleges you are not partnered with?
So we accept NCUK. So the NCUK can come from any provider. Okay. So that's an example of a global certificate that we accept. As long as it's an NCUK, that's number 1. And then the other 2 are given by those specific. So CEG, again, that on-campus certificate is a global certificate. So the fact that we have a partnership with Haven in Maynooth doesn't really matter. We can accept on-campus from any foundation college globally. So there's no need for English language to be presented.
All right. So that answers, and that's a good one also. That answers all the questions regarding English requirements. So as Nigerians, we're exempt from providing that. So Jesse and a couple of others that have been asking those questions, I hope you've gotten your answer. Also, there's a question here. Do you have fully funded PhD programs?
So PhD funding is a complex area, right? And like you're aware, applying for a PhD isn't straightforward. So some PhDs are fully funded by a research institute, some are fully funded by a government, some are fully funded by the student. So depending on the PhD, so that's why talking to a supervisor, you'll not only get a green light for supervision, but you'll also have a conversation about funding. So yes, you can get a fully funded PhD if you apply for the right research. That is under, let's say, for example, Horizon 2020, which is a European funding body. Sometimes they pay for all of the funding for a researcher, including the stipend.
All right, that clarifies that. I'm sorry, I'll take you back a bit, Michael. So we just spoke on the English requirements, and yeah, you say Nigerians are exempt, but we are also aware that IELTS is a requirement for visa when we are applying for visas from Nigeria. So when you say we are exempt, does that mean we're also exempt?
No, so that's just for the university. So that's just for our requirements. So if the visa office in Nigeria requires you to present an English language cert, then that's their requirement. But to get the full offer from UCC, you don't need English.
Okay, all right. That's clear. All right, so can one with a tutor apply for a postgraduate? Yes, you already touched on that. I'm looking for any other questions. Please, is there any free accommodation? Do you offer free accommodations? I'm guessing not.
No.
So no free accommodations. So I'm getting questions here, specific questions regarding the visa. In Jestone Education, we have a dedicated visa team that works tirelessly to ensure that all your visa-related issues are resolved and on time as well. So any questions you have regarding visas, please, when speaking with the advisor, we're going to direct you to the visa team and they're going to handle all those questions and they're going to properly clarify